Night. A hospital. A solid man with his charges walked down the corridor with a confident step. There was a girl lying in one of the wards. A man named Bo Gui walked into the ward. The red-haired girl, who was not expecting to see him so early, was overjoyed, but Bo Gui threw the documents his ward had given her right from the doorstep. They were divorce papers. Bo Gui demanded that the girl sign the divorce agreement. The red-haired girl was at a loss because she had just given birth to a child and did not expect her husband to demand a divorce. But actually the baby was unwanted, and also there was some story where the girl framed and drugged the guy, but the red-haired girl doesn't accept his accusations. She says she's a victim in this situation too. The man advises her to be smarter and sign the contract to get the money. If Bo Gui gets angry, however, she will get nothing. The girl had hoped her husband liked her at least a little when he agreed to marry her, but Bo Gui did it all because of his grandfather, who wouldn't agree to put the company in his grandson's hands unless he married the red-haired girl. The man accuses the girl of not being a saint either, and agreeing to marry only for money. Bo Gui admits that he doesn't like their shared child, but to please his grandfather, he's willing to find the right place for him. The wife is desperate. She pleads not to take the child away. Bo Gui lashes out at the girl, saying that he is running out of nerve, and if she signs the contract, she may be allowed to see the child. But if she doesn't, she will never see him. The man starts counting down so that the girl makes up her mind faster. The red-haired girl becomes convinced that he is not joking and really doesn't love her, so she agrees to sign the ill-fated contract. Bo Gui accepts and warns that after she receives the alimony of 100 million, she will leave Jiangcheng, and if she ever sees him again, she will pretend they don't know each other. A girl in despair, grief, and resentment covered her face with her palms so that her suffering and tears could not be seen. The protagonist asks to be taken home. A luxurious palace with servants standing on the porch, waiting for their mistress. The double bass musicians broke away from playing and stared mesmerized at the helicopter that was descending to the ground in the sky. A clear day, a helicopter is flying in the sky, preparing to land. A gorgeous, beautiful girl emerges from it. The servants greet her. The girl has been in marriage for 3 years, and during this time her husband did not accept her. Now, the protagonist is determined to return to her former place. One of the maids, crouching on her knees, shows her mistress the extraordinary beauty of crystal shoes, which a certain Mr. Jonathan bought them for a huge sum of money at an auction. Thus, he invites the girl to take part in a conference on fragrance tasting. The red-haired woman looked at the television screen, which showed a man with his fingers folded in the shape of a heart. He was showing a look of love and embarrassment. The girl wondered what it was, while the TV started to say that he wanted to be with her and they would see each other next week when he was free. The maid said it was a little surprise arranged for her by Mr. Carroll, the company's global president. The show consists of 1,314 drones and 550 intelligent robots. They have also refined the development of the protagonist over 3 years and are now showing off the latest results. The TV suddenly switched to another man with a blush on his face, indicating his embarrassment, and a gorgeous style on his head. He promises her that they'll see each other on the plane tomorrow. A helicopter appears in the sky. The man from the TV gets out of the airplane, a red rose in his teeth. He is all lit up. He has a parachute behind his back. The man with the styling on his head spreads his arms out to the sides and shouts that he is on his way. He takes a step out of the helicopter. The parachute with "I love you" written on it with a heart instead of the word "love" opens behind his back. The girl looks at it all with a detached look and only wonders who else has splurged. The maid begins to list the names of those who have spent money for her. Meanwhile, a man with a parachute was not allowed to visit the lady servant. He bought her a gift and asked her to go out with him. The girl, paying no attention to the man with the gorgeous styling on his head, turned to her servant, asking her to notify everyone that she was busy. The protagonist is greeted by her mother with beautifully styled hair, a hat on her head, and a fan in her hand. The woman notifies her daughter about the party that will be held in their house in honor of her divorce. The heroine's mother is glad that she is divorced, because now she can be with her every day. The girl says she is still sad about what happened. The mother doesn't understand why her daughter is still upset, since they have so many men in the house. She picked up her daughter's 365 one-night stands herself. The boys welcome her. Mom assures me that there are all different types of guys. The god of romance, a brunette with a playful look of bright green eyes, a tough guy with short-cropped blonde hair showing off his naked, pumped-up torso with duct tape pasted on his chest, a bossy president staring confidently at a girl with deep blue eyes. The mother asks the heroine not to reject them because of her ex-husband. She announces to her daughter that all these men will accompany her on a walk around the estate every day so that she will not be bored. The heroine, who had not expected such a thing from her mother, stood there looking at it all with wide-eyed, doomed eyes. The girl was on her phone browsing an account called Queen Shin Shin, which had photos of men from a large animal farm. The subscriber, Su Shin Yun, writes that all these videos are made on private estates, farms, small islands, and also claims that the girl is a real rich girl. Gadal_ball doesn't understand how one man was able to get so many handsome guys to collaborate on making a video. The girl's mom says that they have a huge budget, so she can change boyfriends at least every day. The girl is, to put it mildly, uncomfortable with the idea. The room, made in light colors, was furnished with expensive and beautiful furniture. The interior was made in the royal style: a luxurious chandelier, an unusually made ceiling, a large bed with lots of pillows, a marble ladies' table with cosmetics and perfume for the main character. Shin Shin sat surrounded by maids, each with their own duties. One girl brushed her mistress's long, well-groomed hair, while the other served her things. Shin Shin had a small mirror in one hand and a red lipstick in the other. The girl was doing her makeup. Suddenly, a mother bursts in, screaming that her daughter just needs to participate in the Cutie 101 program. Shin Shin wonders, asking what it is. The mother asks for the girl to show everyone her beautiful face. Mom shoves her daughter's phone screen that had people's comments written on it into her face. Subscribers are outraged why Queen Shin Shin does not show her face. In fact, they're sure it's an old woman in her 40s or 50s. And a member of the audience with the nickname Talking Shark offered to do his own show. If a girl wants the show to be a hit before it airs, then let her come and get it. The girl stared at her phone incomprehensibly, digesting the information. Meanwhile, the mother was already ready to move the family to Jiangcheng to be with her daughter for the show. Shin Shin reminds her mother that she promised Bo Gui, her ex-husband, that she would not return to Jiangcheng. That's why they can't go there. The woman with her beautifully styled head, with a pearl necklace beautifully accentuating her slender neck, in an airy, sophisticated dress echoing her slender waist, with a light and soft cape on her arms, looked beautiful and frightening at the same time in her urging and coercing her daughter to participate in the project. The mother screams that Shin Shin's ex-husband is dead in her eyes. She is furious and convinces her daughter to just play the show and do whatever she wants there. Her mother, putting her hands on her daughter's shoulders and leaning over her, assured Shin Shin that if she wasn't listened to on the show, she would buy out the entire TV station and generally all the entertainment companies in Jiangcheng. The girl, resigned to the situation she found herself in, agreed to go. There were many high society people hanging around the building. An expensive white-colored car drove up to them. A serious-looking man got out. Everyone greeted him, calling him Mr. Liu. Next to him was a girl in a ball gown, a blonde girl named Chu Yue. The man gave her his hand, and the girl accepted it. The blonde was called the Goddess of Life, and that she was perfect for Mr. Liu. She was talented and beautiful and admired. The couple was surrounded by a crowd of journalists asking questions. The most exciting question was when their wedding would take place. A girl, taking the man under her arm and looking innocent, asked him when he would marry her. The man looked at his beloved and replied that it depended on when she agreed to marry him. The girl brightened up. Subscribers were doting on the couple. People remembered about Shin Shin. Some said she was afraid to come. Others wrote that she was recovering from plastic surgery. One of the men in the paparazzi asked his co-worker, didn't she announce her participation in Cutie 101 to get in front of fans, and why she wasn't showing up? His colleague's jaw dropped as he was the first to notice the girl getting out of the convertible, wearing a beautiful dress the color of a starry sky, with a slit revealing a view of her slender legs, with a fur cape over her skinny shoulders. The girl was all radiant and shining. Everyone was delighted by Shin Shin's appearance. Some had doubts that it was her, while others admired her beauty. In a palace with a beautiful fountain, a blonde-haired, blue-eyed man was sitting in the lobby, a tablet with Shin-Shin's picture in his hands. The man looked at her picture and was happy that he had finally found her. He stood up and told his secretary to tell his mother Queen that she would be the one to solve the country's problems, because he had found the girl of his dreams and was going to her. In the sky flew a helicopter with a red ribbon that said, "Beautiful Shin-Shin." A huge stage is lit by LED spotlights. On the stage stands the main character with a raised microphone in her hand. Behind her stand Mr. Lu with a microphone and his fiancée Wei Wei. All the people gathered there were shouting, waving flags, all sorts of things. Were very happy to welcome the people standing on the stage. The guy with the headband, Goddess Wei Wei, claimed that the Wei Wei girl is a goddess of natural beauty. She is so beautiful that she makes the heart flutter. The girl with purple hair had a ribbon that said, "Queen Shin-Shin is the best." To her, Shin-Shin is so beautiful that she can't take her eyes off. Wei Wei spoke to the protagonist. She confessed that she likes Shin-Shin a lot, and the blonde girl is a fan of her. Wei Wei asks for permission to call the heroine Shin-Shin. The girl did not allow herself to be called that, but suggested that she call her Mrs. Xia. Everyone is shocked. Wei Wei is embarrassed. The guy who is a fan of the blonde girl is not happy with this answer and thinks that Shin-Shin can't be so arrogant because of her looks. The girl with the brown hair stood with a red face and open mouth. The sniper pointed his scope at the stage. Even the bear stood stunned. Subscribers were not happy either. Some said that the main character was overdoing it. Another called her rude. A third called her cursed. And how dare she talk to the goddess Wei Wei like that? The two girls who had conquered a great number of people with their beauty stood silent.
Her mom asks her if it's a fun day because she's so happy. But Rose had a question and tells her mom to tell her what their garden manager's hours are. But her mom says any time because that person always takes care of that garden.
The woman with her beautifully... Wei Wei stood still in a daze for a while, but jumped up the next second, declaring that this woman was awesome and she adored her. Shin-Shin thought that Bo Gui's new wife was pretty, so she grabbed her by the waist and took her by the chin, asking her if she wanted to leave her fiancé and follow her. This was the second time Shin-Shin had shocked everyone. Everyone. The alien with the watermelon in his hands, the cat in the background, the girl with a cross for a mouth, the guy without clothes, and even Totoro stood there silently digesting the situation. The two girls with a blush on their faces happily embraced. Mr. Lu himself was, to put it mildly, not happy about everything that was happening, his ward assuring him that this woman was provoking him on purpose. Shin-Shin smiled, and without letting go of Wei Wei's hand, she showed the man her middle finger. Wei Wei put her index finger to her ear, which had an earpiece in it. She told the protagonist that there was a new arrangement. The blonde asked to do a favor and look at the big screen. The viewers expressed their opinions. One said there was nothing wrong with her seducing a woman. Another admired Shin-Shin's reaction, while another could not believe that someone was trying to steal a girl away from the richest president. Some people nicknamed Shin-Shin and Mr. Lu as the tiger and the wolf who got into a fight. The protagonist glanced at the screen, depicting the confrontation between Shin-Shin and Mr. Lu. But in the next instant, the TV screen switched to a handsome blonde-haired guy with eyes the color of the sky, wearing a luxurious, expensive suit. Everyone went wild. Someone's nose was bleeding. "New man!" was shouted from every corner. Shin-Shin stood there, losing her eyes. She had nothing to say. The guy worshipping Mrs. Wei Wei almost had his eyes blinded by the beauty of the man on the screen. A handsome man, a foreigner judging by his accent, gruffly mouthed that he was a great friend and came to the show today. He doesn't know the place too well and hopes to have a good time. All subscribers were delighted with the prince. There were people ready to lick the screen. The man amazed the viewers with his appearance. The girl hesitated. He seemed familiar to her. Meanwhile, the blonde man told the protagonist that he hated the fact that he couldn't see her face. The girl looked at the prince and said that filming would not start until tomorrow. She thought about how he knew her and what he was doing. Wei Wei stood behind Shin-Shin with a watermelon in her hands and looked at everything with a cheerful expression. While the protagonist was sweating from not understanding what was going on because she didn't know who this person was. The prince's huge private plane was flying in the sky. The man lay on the couch with tears in his eyes and asked his servant why the filming had not started today. The prince drunkenly voiced in a Western accent something profane, meaning something sad. Wei Wei spoke into the microphone, addressing the audience. She's sure they're just as curious as she is about this high-ranking and mysterious handsome man. All shouted out in one voice, "Yes!" Wei Wei promised that they would learn more about him when he became a contestant on the show. But now they would return to the interactive session. The blonde informed Xin Xin that before the show started, they had collected a lot of questions from the internet user and asked her if she would like to answer them right now. Xin Xin agreed. The first question was, if she looks so good, why didn't she show her face before? A Wei Wei fan shouted out that it was all about hype. Shovels, nunchakus, pitchforks, and Morgensterns were pointed at him, and the guy immediately shut up. Xin Xin replied that she had the right to use her face as she wished. Whether she showed her face or not depended on her mood. The next question was why she came on the show. Subscribers are again indignant. They think that she has made a big deal out of it, going crazy with popularity and so on. The most important thing that the subscribers found out is that the pig farm is really real, and there is a need for a cleaner for pigs. Xin Xin, meanwhile, claimed that she was just trying to counter those who said she was ugly. The prince flew in his plane and burst into tears, saying that if Xin Xin didn't take off the program tomorrow, they wouldn't see each other. The servant stood and listened to the blonde man's whining in silence. But then the oldest of the servants announced that His Majesty should meet his love tonight. Everyone supported him. Xin Xin was walking to her room, thinking how tiring it was to stand on stage and that it had been a long time since she had worn high-heeled shoes. Suddenly, someone grabbed her arm. It turned out to be Bo Gui, her ex-husband. He pushed her hard against the wall, pinning her on both sides, thus blocking her path. He was furious that she disobeyed him and returned to Zhangcheng. Xin Xin pretended like she didn't know him. Mr. Liu grabbed her by the shoulders and told her to stop playing dumb, and if she had come back to ruin his wedding, she'd better give up the scheme. Miss Zia pushed him away from her, but he intercepted her hand and squeezed it hard, telling her that he didn't like her at all and not to test his patience. The girl decided she wanted to teach this smug jerk a lesson. She grabbed the bag. He laughed at her helplessness. Xin Xin swung at him, but he realized what the girl wanted to do and wanted to stop. But then someone's hand appeared from nowhere and grabbed his wrist. This prevented the man from stopping the girl, and with all his might, the heroine's bag slammed into her ex-husband's face. The blow was so strong that the man flew to the end of the corridor, his lip bleeding. He stared dazedly at the girl, and only now saw the man who had stopped him from fending off the blow. Xin Xin and the prince stood and looked at Bo Gui with disgust and anger. The blonde man asked him who gave him permission to touch his woman. The main character's ex-husband was sitting on the floor thinking that he couldn't handle him and was generally afraid of embarrassing himself. All he could do was shout out who he was. The prince stares at Bo Gui with an indifferent gaze, interjecting, "Who is he?" The blonde man, taking Xin Xin by the waist, asks her to say who he is. The girl stared at him with a surprised look. She blushed and thought that this guy knew her. No matter what his purpose was, he was here to help her. Xin Xin turns to introduce the blonde man to Lord Liu, but realizes he doesn't know his name at all. As the girl stood there, confused as to what to say to her, the prince melted all over and thought in his heart only of the fact that she had called him her boyfriend. The inner puppy was delighted and embarrassed. Xin Xin's ex-husband, finally getting up from the floor, asked her that in such a short time, she already had a new boyfriend. The girl folded her arms on her chest and replied to Mr. Liu that he was so used to controlling everything, including the boyfriends of strangers to him. The prince standing behind opened his mouth in admiration. The prince's bodyguards were talking disdainfully to each other about the insolent man. One of the guards said that he had a lot of attitude. Possessing apparently not a strong mind, the main character's ex-husband thinks the whole world revolves around him alone. He asks the blonde man that if she tries to ruin his wedding, he will support her too. The prince was about to teach the insolent man a lesson, but the girl stopped him. Xin Xin explained to Mr. Liu that she only came to Jiangcheng to participate in the program, and she didn't care who he would marry. But the deranged Bo Gui stood his ground, claiming that women are duplicitous. Shin Shin, holding the prince under her arm, assured Mr. Lu that there was nothing unusual about marrying someone, and if one day he decided to marry a bitch, he should definitely let her know. The man was in a terrible frenzy. The prince's bodyguards stood in his way. Bo Gui quickly dialed someone on the phone and asked on the receiver if there was anyone he couldn't control in the city. In the background, he heard a demanding question directed at him. It was an old woman who had been blocked by an insolent gentleman. The woman claimed that she had been waiting for him to give way to her for a long time, but he didn't even hear her. Bo Gui was disgraced. He looked at the couple who were standing not far from him, the blonde looking at him with pity, Shin Shin smiling awkwardly. Bo Gui himself was embarrassed in front of his grandmother and gave way to her. The granny walked on and reprimanded the gentleman. One of the guards came up behind him and announced that he was glad he had learned his lesson. The prince and the girl, meanwhile, having lost interest in the situation and in Bo Gui himself, walked hand in hand down the corridor. When they moved a decent distance away, the girl thanked the prince, but the man doesn't need thanks. The girl asks him who he is. The prince lied to her, telling her that he is an exclusive butler hired by her mother, Miss Chen Yalin. The girl looked confused. She didn't believe butlers could be so handsome. It was quite her mother's style, though. One of the bodyguards handed her the phone. It was Shin Shin's mom. She asked if her daughter was happy with her gift, assured her that Xiu was a pro at what she did, and that today they would be together. The mother herself sat with a fancy hairstyle on her head, with a mask on her face, looking at her manicure. Miss Chen Yalin paid extra money in case Shin Shin became sad and lonely. Xiu could cheer her up. As the girl approached Xiu to say that she could count on him, the two bodyguards goofed around, one hand showing okay and the other cool. Apparently, they approve of Xiu and Shin Shin's relationship. Subscribers in the comments doubt that Shin Shin is rich because nothing is written about her on the internet. They say that she is fake, and the necklace around her neck is fake. The girl showed a picture of herself wearing a necklace like the main characters, but in a different color. People contacted the support service to find out if it was fake or not. The support replied that they do not have a necklace of that color. It is a fake. People started hating her on the internet. They only see her as uncultured, low intelligence, and arrogant. And to top it all off, she wears a knockoff brand. Everyone thinks she's pretending to be rich. Bo Gui was following all the comments. He was sitting in his room with a tablet in his hands, a maid hovering over him, processing his face. Shin Shin was giving him a hard time. All the hate on the internet is Bo Gui's fault. He's sure that Shin Shin provoked him, because if she had listened to him and not come to Jiangcheng, nothing would have happened. The door to the man's room was kicked open by some man with his foot. Mr. Lu opened his eyes fearfully and stared at the embroidered door. An elderly man with a mustache appeared in the opening. He slapped Mr. Lu right from the doorstep. The man turned out to be Bo Gui's grandfather and called him unworthy because while he was being treated abroad, his grandson was hiring people to smear Shin Shin's reputation. The grandfather demanded that Bo Gui immediately delete all his comments. The grandson complained that the girl hit him. The man did not feel sorry for him. On the contrary, he said that he deserved it. The maid quietly ratted Bo Gui out. She said that the gentleman had called his lawyer and the police to accuse Shin Shin of assault. Mr. Lu tried to justify himself, but the man wouldn't listen, only getting even angrier at his grandson. The maid behind him was also on his grandfather's side, showing her middle finger to Bo Gui and calling him a bastard. A black car was driving down the road. Shin Shin from the boyfriend was sitting in it. The slander on the internet amused the girl. Her life had not turned into a nightmare as her ex-husband wanted it to be. The man asked why she allows herself to be slandered and bullied. The girl thinks that the more they do it, the more popular she becomes. Shin Shin was only concerned about one thing. What kind of personal butler was this who flew around in a helicopter while she, his mistress, drove a car? The man who was accompanying her became very nervous and started to say whatever came to his mind. He tried to lie ineptly that it was the protagonist's mother who had specially invited Xiu for her, and she had paid a lot of money for his services. The girl didn't believe him. A prince from overseas followed in a helicopter directly above the car. He was outraged by the heckling directed at Shin on the internet. He demanded that his bodyguards find the person who organized it all and then sue him. The bodyguards immediately dropped all their important business, namely eating chopsticks, and started searching at the speed of light for the culprit in several phones at the same time. Even the pilot was not left out. They quickly found out that Liu Bogi's cronies had done it. The men were angry because Mr. Liu had once gotten Shin's heart and didn't value it, and now he wanted to ruin her life. Before he could completely freak out, the phone in his hand vibrated and Shin's name appeared on the screen. The man immediately brightened up, and after accepting the call, he asked his mistress happily what was wrong. The girl warned that there would be a press conference tomorrow and they should prepare it. Ah Xiu agreed. Shin asked her not to do something she didn't ask for and hung up. She still can't believe he's just a butler. The girl laid her head on the guy she was riding in the car with and said she was sleepy. The blonde-haired guy let her lay down on him and sleep for a while. A large conference room, many people in the hall. A girl with blonde hair stood behind the tribunal. Her assistant was sitting behind her. The speaker was talking about Shin. She assured that the rumors about Madame Xia Shin had not only affected her reputation, but also caused great damage to GL's business image, so they wanted to clarify some points. Firstly, Miss Shin is a premium member of GL Second. The pink diamond necklace mistaken for a fake turned out to be a gift that was made especially for Miss Xia by their top designer. The girl couldn't help herself and began to speak nervously in a high-pitched tone, saying that thanks to the generosity of Madame Xia, everyone had the opportunity to purchase such a beautiful work of art. Miss Xia believes that all girls have the right to appreciate and own such a work of art. It was because of Shin that the company was able to produce the other 3 colors. Everyone should thank her for that. The assistant tried to calm the woman down, but she continued to rant at people, saying that they were slandering her instead of thanking her. The designers of their brand were just furious about it. Everyone sat in shock at what was happening. Also, all 3 presidents decided to stand up for Shin. The president of VJ, a long-haired man with unusually pink eyes, spoke in support of Shin, assuring everyone that if what Madame Xia is wearing is not in the catalog, it means that the item was made especially for her. Madame Shin never wore fakes. People on the internet changed their opinion about the main character. They said they envied her for being on top of the world. Some compared themselves to a horse, issuing their theory that some people are born riders and others are born a horse. Instead of 300,000 subscribers, Miss Xia's account now has 100 million subscribers. Unfortunately, the Hani 101 team informed all subscribers of the decision to stop working with Miss Xia, as some of her actions had a great impact. The subscribers were enraged. They demanded to withdraw the application and re-invited Shin to participate in the program. The man apparently in charge of the Cutie 101 show was furious because they removed Shin at the behest of subscribers, and those same subscribers demanded her back. The assistant with her bangs styled to one side asked not to be angry and offered to bring Shin back because her popularity had skyrocketed. She would always be the center of attention. The headman recalled that even the most powerful presidents came out to make a statement in favor of Shin. The aide asked if it was normal for them to apologize and admit their mistake about Shin, and for the sake of ratings and popularity, there would be no harm in writing a letter of apology. The dark-haired man gave the go-ahead and said they had half an hour to write the text and publish it. The assistant with beautiful bangs accepted the assignment and called Shin a magical person, asking everyone why her home address wasn't listed in her profile. And how come her home address is the Dragon King's villa, which is located on the mountain? The girl looking at her phone announced to everyone that Shin had tweeted. Madame Xia retweeted the tweets of the 3 presidents with apologies and announced that she had read them. The person in charge wanted to see the tweet, but they had to pay to see it. The prince was sitting in his suite, looking at Shin's photo. A person came by to announce to him that the 3 brands had apologized according to his wishes, and the program team wrote a letter of apology to re-announce Shinshin's participation in the project, and Shu was concerned about what Bogui's company had done. The man said that 37 contracts had been terminated with Mr. Lu's company, but his grandfather had asked Miss Chen Yalin, Shinshin's mother, for help. And Shu promised that for the sake of Madame Chen and Boss Lu, he was willing to let him go, and asked what Shinshin was doing now. The man said that the future princess is currently making a video. The blonde man stood up and said it was time for the butler to go out and organize a professional camera crew for the girl. The man was already heading for the door when his ward announced that the girl was making videos with handsome men. After this news, it was as if a bucket of ice water had been poured on Shu. The girl was standing on the street near a fancy fountain with a man in her arms, posing for a picture. The girl was standing in the street near a fancy fountain with a man in her arms, posing for a picture. The blonde wondered if he wasn't prettier. Why wasn't he in that guy's shoes right now? His assistant reminded the prince that they were supposed to be taking wedding pictures with the future princess. The girl noticed that the man was looking at her and wondered why he was doing that. The girl noticed that the man was looking at her and wondered why he was doing that. Shu was angry and wanted to jump down from the balcony with a sword in his hand, but his men stopped him. His men put their arms around his waist, asking him to calm down and shouting at him that he was so much better than these glamorous plebs. While the girl was looking at the pictures, she couldn't even imagine what was going on behind her back. When she turned around, the prince was already standing with his back to her, all red, surrounded by his guards. They were calming their prince down. Shinshin asked Shu to come down to take a photo. The man, like a loyal dog, agreed. The daughter and mother sat in the spacious room on a large sofa covered with cushions. Miss Chen Yalin sat in a hug with a pillow in her hands. She was telling her daughter that Shu had no status. He was just a butler. Shinshin had her doubts about that. She told her mother that her third brother had already told her that the blonde man wasn't the only butler she had picked for Madame Xia. The woman was at a loss, after all. Xia Yucheng doesn't know how to keep her mouth shut. At this time, the guy sneezed. The daughter realized that her mother was hiding something. She told her that she was easy to figure out. Mom stared at her daughter, dumbfounded. Shinshin asked her mother who he was. Chen Yalin was very confused and bewildered. The daughter calmed her mother down, saying that she was worried about his intentions that could harm their family. The girl called her mother frivolous. The prince wanted to see Shinshin every day, so his mother allowed him to visit her. The prince wanted to see Shinshin every day, so his mother let him come to see her. The daughter didn't believe much. The mother was alarmed and said that she was telling the truth. Miss Chen Yalin told the daughter if she didn't like him, it was better to let him go.
She was sitting with her head on the end of the couch and told the maid she could leave now. At the time, she thought it was giving her a headache, but she would look forward to dinner. Mr. Moore told her he would prepare dinner for her.
Show was furious because a luxurious house, Grandpa Lu and Mr. Lu himself were sitting in one of the rooms. The grandfather hadn't seen Shinshin for a long time, so he asked his grandson to invite the girl into the house to meet the child. The man did not understand how he should invite his ex-wife to the house if he was already engaged to another girl. Bogi hid the child, and he was afraid that his grandfather would expose his plan. But the grandfather insisted. He demanded that his grandson call Shinshin immediately and invite her to come tomorrow. The man had no choice but to obey. So with a sad face, he started dialing Shinshin's number. The number didn't answer. Bogi thought she had some kind of problem with her phone, but his attendant assumed that Madame Xia had just blocked it. The call, from another phone, was answered by Shu, who was sitting in Shinshin's room at the time. He said that Madame Xia was taking a bath, so he couldn't answer the call. Bogi became angry. He threw the phone on the floor. His guard fell down in tears because it was his new phone. The smartphone could not be saved. But Mr. Lu didn't pay attention to the guy's suffering. He demanded to find out such a Xia Shinshin and what kind of person he was. Another guard suggested that the man ask his grandfather about Xia Shinshin. Bogui thought that indeed his grandfather had forced him to marry her. He must know who she was. The grandfather tells his grandson that they have lived together for 3 years, and in that time, he has only learned that her name is Xia Shinshin, and that's it, what kind of husband he is. Grandpa stood up and told Bo Gui that if he wanted to know who she was, let him ask her himself. The man asked Tang Nan to immediately find the best hackers in the world to research all the information about Xin for him. When the girl, all nice and tucked in, came into the room, dark-haired guy informed her that an unknown number had called her phone. He had left voice messages. Madame Xia Xin asked who it was and what he wanted. The prince came up to her and said it was Lu Bogui. The man also revealed that her ex-husband said into the phone, "Damn woman, why did she block me?" Xin handed the phone back to the dark-haired guy with the words that he was dead to her. The prince's servant whispered and reminded him to watch his facial expressions, for the blond man was completely embarrassed, standing all red with admiring gaze, looking at Xin. Miss Xia demanded that someone bring in people from the programming team. But it turns out the world's best hackers had already intercepted a cyber attack, trying to get information on the future princess. As the girl was walking towards the exit, she was called out by a guy with the information that Xiaohe had sent a message that Lu Bogui had placed an order to verify her information, but another mysterious customer had placed a blocking order. Xiaohe never managed to find out who did it. This Xiaohe must be a big shot since he was able to find out such details, but the girl had no time to deal with it. She had to get busy filming. Xin had a man waiting downstairs. He came with a handwritten letter of apology. The girl thought in her mind that she didn't want to hear the apology live. She wouldn't do it for the sake of the show's ratings. The girl hoped that after the program, she wouldn't have to participate in the part of the show where you have to shoot in an apartment. The man didn't understand her. Xin explained that she was not used to living in cramped apartments, as she had lived in spacious houses since childhood. The man was an assistant director and cannot make decisions. The maid snapped her fingers in front of the man and handed him a phone. It said that he would now be the director of Cutie 101, and Mrs. Xia's request to shoot at her house was approved. The man looked excitedly at his phone. He agreed to accept the company's new decisions. The director looked at the girl, wearing a dress of soft pink shades with bright red, beautifully styled hair. Xin was all radiant and shining. He thought he really liked this aristocrat. The head of the show and his assistant with beautifully styled bangs sat, ready for filming, waiting. On the internet, Queen Xin posted a post announcing a contest to celebrate 10 million subscribers. The girl 10 winners, the prize is 10 million, which they will share among themselves. The dark-haired man and his assistants were in complete shock. There was a prince sitting on a chair reading some papers. The servant announced that Xin was not home and showed the man that she had posted a tweet on her page. The blonde man instructed them to find companies to support them after the second episode of the show aired. Xin and the prince bumped into each other on the stairs. The man offered his hand to the girl. Bogey was sitting in his office with the guards behind him. He was on the phone with Miss Xia. The man asked her where she got so much money for the prank. Before he could finish, the girl hung up. The man was furious. He was calling again from a phone other than his own, and the blonde guy behind him had already started crying. His guards were sure that calling from other people's phones would be of little help here, all because all the company's cell phone numbers had been hacked by Xin. Bogui asked him to take him to the mansion so his grandfather could invite her himself. The ex-husband of the heroine asked when will be the next live broadcast of Sweet Love. In 2 days, all the guests will live in the apartment Sweet Love together. It would seem that Bogui should not care about Xin, but no, he didn't like the fact that there would be men there. The website said that there were separate areas for men and women. Mr. Lu was not happy about it. The man was elated at this news. He decided to formalize a contract for him to attend as a guest. To say that all of his men were in stunned shock is saying nothing. The internet streamed the Sweet Love show, the first part of Cutie 101. After each of the female guests perform their individual talent show, the live viewers will vote together for the qualifiers, and the invited guests will be judged by a panel of judges. Weiwei stood on stage, dressed in a blue above-the-knee dress. She was announcing the Sweetheart 101 show's contestant selection process. The first contestant, Li Shu, a flirty brunette with lilac-colored eyes, performed in a traditional costume, thus smoking the hearts of the viewers. They were in awe of her beauty. The girl bowed and left the stage. While walking backstage, Li Shu met Xin Xin, gave her an arrogant look, and walked past her. Xin Xin came on stage. One judge asked a provocative question, why there was nothing written in the specialty box. He said it was to attract attention. The prince, hearing such statements, ordered his bodyguard to massacre him. The guy immediately prepared his pistols. Wei Wei ran up to Xin Xin. The main character was wearing an outfit called Tai Chi. The blonde asked if the red-haired girl was going to perform a Tai Chi dance. The girl confirmed her assumptions. This was the first time such a dance was performed on the talent show stage. Wei Wei allowed Miss Xia to begin. Xin Xin started to dance Tai Chi. All the subscribers really liked the girl's performance. The same judge who was biased against Xin Xin from the beginning stopped the dance and gave his opinion. He thinks that the program should choose the stars of tomorrow, not cheap stunts. The girl doesn't understand. It turns out for him, traditional cultural heritage is cheap tricks. The man got angry and started to explain rudely that in a talent show, you can either dance or sing. The judge also said that this stage was not for Xin Xin today. The girl laughed. Guys ran out from backstage. One went to the microphone. The others dragged the insolent judge away from the stage. The guy at the microphone turned out to be Sweet Love's producer and vice president of the company. He started apologizing to everyone and announced that there was a mistake in the program and one of the judges would be replaced. The prince was watching all of this. He was very angry at the situation. The man didn't want to limit himself to kicking out the judge. He needed his suffering. Subscribers were thrilled to see such an exciting sight, but there were those who didn't like Xin Xin's behavior. The audience was really puzzled by what was going on. They thought she couldn't act like a capricious child just because she was rich, and were on the judge's side, because you really have to sing and dance at a talent show. Xin Xin agreed to dance. Wei Wei asked her what she would perform. The girl remembered a recent run-in with the previous contestant. She announced a dance called Soma to outdance Li Shu. The girl changed her clothes and started performing her dance. Everyone was delighted. People thought that this was the best performance of the Soma dance. The audience had no doubts. This dance was far superior to the dance performed by Li Shu. The host, Wei Wei, stood to the side and watched Xin Xin's movements mesmerized. The guy walked up to the blonde and said that it was already time to evaluate Xin Xin. The girl walked up to the protagonist and said that in her heart, Miss Xia had received an S grade. The judges were not of the same opinion. The guy with the glasses gave an A, and the judge with his hair styled upwards, as if he had been standing in a strong wind for hours, gave a B. He attributed his assessment to the fact that the costumes were not prepared and not enough respect was shown for the dance. But he liked the Tai Chi performance. Thus, Madame Xia passed on, which Wei Wei happily announced. When the girl went backstage, an angry Lu Shi was waiting for her there. Xin Xin, upon seeing the girl, said if she had vision problems, she was willing to refer her to a private clinic specializing in ophthalmology. In the dressing room, Lu Shi sat at the ladies' table and discussed Xin Xin. She called her a nasty girl, and was sure that Xin Xin had a dance prepared from the beginning, but she decided to perform Tai Chi first for the hype. But she also admits that Miss Xia is really good. Another contestant with a bob apparently disagreed with her, but had to lie that Xin Xin's dance totally sucks and the audience is blind since they think Miss Xia is better than her. Lu Shi showed the girl a photo of Xin Xin hugging an elderly man. The girl wanted to tear Madame Xia's reputation to shreds with this photo. Bogey appeared in the room. He gave 100 million money to Lu Shi to buy a new phone, and he took the phone with the photo for himself. The girls walked nervously down the corridor, and Wei Wei stood in their way and asked if they needed anything. Lu Shi excitedly convinced the blonde that they were too tired and decided to return early to the apps. Wei Wei noticed Bo Gui in the hallway and called out to him. The man came to get her, but he lied to her and said he had gone into the wrong dressing room. The girl was happy, so she decided to share the reason with Lu Bogi. The man assumed that she had gotten a role in a movie she had always wanted to play. But the object of her happiness was Xin Xin's autograph. The man remembered the photos, dirt on Xin Xin, and thought that she didn't deserve the love of her fans. Mr. Lu's assistants came into the office and found him on the couch with an unwell look and a cigarette in his hand. The men brought Bo Gui new SIM cards to call Shin Shin and talk to her. The guys assure him that these SIM cards are enough to talk to Miss Jia for 3 hours. Bo Gui immediately started inserting SIMs into the phone and dialed the girl. The phone said that the number was unavailable, and the SIM cards that the assistants had brought were blocked. The guy advises Mr. Liu not to waste time on questions and explanations, but rather get straight to the point. The man had no sooner uttered Xianxian's name than the handset was dropped. The man was on the verge of a breakdown. The assistant remembered that the girl keeps her own blog. You can send her a private message there. In Shin Shin's house, the maid stood with the telephone and happily blocked numbers, for the prince butler had promised her a raise. There was a text message on the phone, Mr. Liu wrote. He promised the girl if she voluntarily left Jiangcheng, he would give as much money as she wanted. He didn't think she would stoop to lying to the old man. The maid, having read the message, showed it to the blonde man, who was quietly sipping tea. The false butler was furious at seeing the text message. He asked the maid if Shin Shin was still asleep. The girl replied that right now, Madam had to take care of her skin. The man asked to go and hand over Miss Zia's phone, because they have no right to reply to such messages. Shin Shin was in the closet, picking out her outfit. A maid came to tell her that Bo Gui had sent her a personal message. The main character glanced at the screen of her phone before replying. She chose one outfit from the options offered by the maid. After reading the message, Shin Shin replied to her ex-husband that he was fed up with her and didn't like her, so why the farce? The girl texted that she would get in trouble if she communicated with her ex-husband. The maid who came in stood next to the mistress and smiled, holding a phone in her hands. Today, it will be announced that Shin Shin is not living in the apartment for the show. Bo Gui's return caused a lot of trouble for the heroine, so she decided to block him. Lord Liu was still also sitting in his office. He sat there and concentrated on stitching a message to Shin Shin that if he really liked her, all of Jiangcheng knew about it. A notification appeared in the chat room that the man had been blocked. Bo Gui didn't expect this, so he stared at his phone in bewilderment, looking sad and shocked. 4 girls stood in the middle of the kitchen and listened to the show host's announcement. The contestants will live together in the newlyweds' apartment. In addition, there would be a 24-hour live broadcast from each room, but the bedroom would not be 24 hours. The guy reminded Weiwei that Xia Shin Shin would be living in her own home for a special reason. The girls were dissatisfied why she was getting special treatment. This is unfair because all participants should be treated equally. Subscribers weren't thrilled with the news either. Never had such a thing not to stay in the apartment. The girl has not yet appeared on the set. Shin Shin appeared and explained to everyone that she wasn't used to living like this. Along with her, a man came in with a huge stack of documents. The girls stood there and didn't understand what was going on. The man handed the papers to Lu Shi and said that they listed all the furniture used by the lady because she uses all the things of a certain brand. He told about the alarm clock, the comfort of getting out of bed, the temperature of the water, which must be kept at a certain degree, and the handmade essential oils she uses before going to bed. It is obligatory to pick flowers at the same time as the first morning rays. The man asked the frightened girls if they would pick flowers for the mistress. This was done to discourage the girls from living together with Shin Shin, and to make them realize that it would be better if the main character lived in her own house. But Miss Jia calmed the girls down and said that as a gift for the program's tolerance, there would be live recording and broadcasting in her house too. The filmed broadcast showed Madame Xia's luxurious house. The viewers were delighted to see such a huge and beautiful estate. Lu Shi, who had been watching Shin Shin the whole time, was thinking about the photo on her phone, the dirt on the girl. She wanted to make her fall from the clouds. Bo Gui was in the dressing room with his guards. One of the guys was upset that Shin Shin had blocked his account. On a chair nearby sat a bald man wearing a pink dress and makeup. He came up behind the guy to comfort him. The guy was scared. The crying man had Miss Zia's number. The ex-husband asked where he got it from. This number came from a fan club for 50,000 bucks. Bo Gui recalled that the girl was married and had a child. The guy wouldn't stop and stated that when she divorced, he would take her child's last name, and if she didn't divorce, he would take a hoe. Guys willing to break down walls for love. This guy was a cousin, and he didn't seem to know that Shin was Bogui's ex-wife. Miss Zia's ex-husband is sure she still loves him. But his assistant asked how he could know that, because she has formed her own fan club, and anyone who wants to have dinner with her, if they have the right looks and family of course, can join the club and get her number. The man does think it's a way to piss him off, but he won't fall for it. The aide went to the school to pick up the girl. The account received an application to join Queen Shin's fan club. The prince was looking through the applications. It was the account of, as written, a girl of 14 years old named Lu and Xia. The man decided to go to her profile to take a closer look at her more closely. It turned out to be no girl at all. It was a male profile and was 18 years old. The man quickly brushed off this request. Shin was on the phone. She was told that social media was reporting that she had won the project, so she didn't need to come to training. She was told that rumors spread very quickly and they can't influence them in any way, so she'd better be at the filming in her apartment. The girl replied that she agreed to spend 8 hours a day at the newlyweds' apartment. The butler stood upset. The girl asked him what was wrong. The sadness was because of Shin. Mrs. Xia should take the servants he had arranged with to the apartment, but he is afraid she is not used to such a place. The girl assured him that she had been in worse places. The blonde man still has poor Chinese, but he teaches it every day until 3 in the morning to better communicate with Miss Xia. To reward his loyalty, the girl invites the man with her to the shoot. The prince switched to English because he didn't understand Shin. The maid translated the invitation to him. The man accepted. The girl offered to get ready and go together tomorrow. At this time, Bogui's phone received a notification that he had been refused to join the group. He asked his assistant to lend him the number. The guy was not at all happy about this request. Shin drove up in a white car accompanied by security guards and Ashu to the store to choose new outfits. The other contestants of the show were outside at this time, watching the girl. The blue-eyed girl with a bob asked Li Shu why the guy from Sweet Night was with Xia Shin. Li Shu was sure that the main character used the boss's money to hire a young man. The girls decided to go and see. Xia Shin wanted to go through, but the guards wouldn't let her in. It turned out that they were only serving Mrs. Xia today. In addition, the president of Wangku came out to apologize to Xia Shin. She wondered if it had something to do with the old man. Wei Wei and Mr. Lu appeared in the store. Li Shu ran up to them and told them that Wangku was not cooperating with them today. The guy in the store confirmed the girl's words, saying that they had a special guest in the store now. Shin's ex-husband was angry because Miss Xia was now with a blonde man and was picking out her clothes. His fiancée Wei Wei noticed that the two looked good together. Mr. Lu demanded to say who the honored guest was. The guard hesitated, but then Shin appeared. She assumed he had come to spend money. The man was furious. The atmosphere was heating up. The guard hurriedly intervened, motioning for Miss Chu to come through and see the new bag that had gone on sale yesterday. Bogui decided to show Shin how gentle he can be with other women, so to make her jealous, he took his fiancée's hand. At this time, Shin didn't even think of looking towards Mr. Lu. She was choosing outfits and consulting with Ashu, who was embarrassed and delighted. To him, Xia is beautiful and looks great in all the outfits. The ex-husband was angry. The girl tried on many outfits, and both the guards and Wei Wei were delighted with all of them. The blonde offered to try on 2 more dresses. But Li Shu intervened. She decided to buy the 2 dresses, and if Shin didn't mind wearing the same as the others, let her take the other dresses of the same style. Mrs. Xia demanded that the 2 items be removed from the shelves. Li Shu made a scandal. The girl was angry that Shin thought she was someone else, and how could she humiliate the customers in Wangku's store? The ex-husband stood and gloated, for this rising star had become too arrogant. He thought it would be a good idea to offer the violet-eyed girl an advertisement. Wei Wei justified Shin's behavior by saying that she was a famous designer and had her own take on fashion. The store staff demanded the goods back, and the girl became even more angry. The prince stepped into the conversation. He said that Miss Xia wanted her to get better service, even though the 2 participants were doing all the antics. Shin intervened. She said she would decide herself who was rude to her and asked the staff to wrap up all the things and send the things that the girls would like. The prince took out a VIP card. Mr. Liu could afford to buy anything Che Weiwei liked. He told the staff that whatever Mrs. Chu took or tasted would be sent to Servant Liu. But the vendor reminded him that the same thing was the first thing Mrs. Xia had demanded. The CEO of Liu Group clashed with the mysterious blonde man over women's clothes. Xin suggested to take it all as a gift in honor of friendship. Wei Wei happily agreed. She asked Mr. Liu not to be so gloomy. The man was very angry with Xin and had no choice but to agree. The guards thought it was awkward for the two participants to be in the store and offered to escort them out. Xin and the prince also left the store. The ex-husband thought she was making him angry on purpose. The house was being filmed. Wei Wei was starting the broadcast. Li Shu and the girl with the carriage stood behind and talked about Xin, who wasn't in the apartment yet, which was strange because she had agreed to cooperate with the live broadcast. But then, spectacularly, she can't do it any other way, Xin appeared. She was wearing a luxurious outfit, with the prince walking beside her. Xiao Lei, the host of the broadcast, handed the card with the numerical number 8 into Xin's hands. This meant that the protagonist would be sharing a room with Li Shu. The girls were, to say the least, not thrilled with this news. The hostess, on the other hand, was delighted with this news. Xin said that she lives in her own house, and if the director agrees, she can live with Li Shu. The viewers were outraged because having money does not mean that the girl can do whatever she wants. And in general, the main character does everything for the sake of popularity. Such attention from the viewers to Xin pleased the head director. So he decided to broadcast the main camera on Queen Xin and additional cameras on the rest of the show. Li Shu was advertising a set of skincare products from the Mu Yan family. She got fans who called Xin too arrogant. The contestant asked her followers not to cause quarrels, as she is happy that they like her. Of course she didn't think so. She wanted everyone to know about her connection with the man she was cuddling with. Then there would be even more people criticizing her. And Li Shu will have a lot of fans. Xin came to the room she shared with Li Shu. With her were her servants, the prince and the hostess. Li Shu had prepared a gift for the girl, a set of cosmetics that she had been given for her live advertisement. She didn't want to give it away, but she needed to show her friendliness to the viewers. The girl refused the gift, saying that she doesn't use little-known brands. Li Shu tried to soften the situation by asking Xin that she was still angry about the subscribers. The girl herself has nothing against the main character. She assured her that it was a very good skincare product. Xin stood her ground. She didn't want to use those products. The girl with the bob demanded to show the mere mortals what skincare products Miss Jia was using. The prince intervened, but the girl quickly calmed him down and asked him to bring her cosmetics. When they opened the box, everyone went blind. Her grooming was encrusted with diamonds. The girl was not impressed with her box of cosmetics. She had never heard of such a brand. One of the maids told her that all of Mistress's skincare products were developed by her own research institute according to her skin type. The contestant with the brown hair was not surprised by this either, because no one knows if it is licensed, if it is hygienic, and she would never use the product if it was given to her for free. The prince lambasted her, saying that she really thought someone would give her such an expensive product. The girl is pissed off by the whole situation and decides to express everything she thinks about Xin. She thinks that the protagonist is bluffing by showing her the expensive package. In a fit of anger, the girl remembers the Tai Chi dance that Miss Xia performed in the qualifying round. Why didn't the ambassador let Xia Xin go instead of Li Shu? The blonde man replied that Xia Xin had refused. The girl with the brown hair didn't like that the blonde man interfered in the conversation. The Taiji ambassador, namely the third-generation Cheng Great Guhuayu Taiji, had personally come to visit them. Li Shu tried to calm her friend down, telling her not to talk too much. If Miss Xia wasn't invited, then there was a reason. Xin replied that if Huayuyu was here, he should bow at her feet. Qing, the carriage girl, was outraged by Miss Xia's insolent behavior. She demanded that she invite Gu Huayu. Li Shu tried to smooth over the conflict and said that Xin was so good at Taiji that she must have known Lord Gu Huayu. The prince didn't like the girl being so rude to Xin, So he called the great Gu Huayuyu. The main character announced to everyone that the great man would come in half an hour. The audience became annoyed with the girl. Everyone was waiting for Mr. Huayuyu. The false butler suggested that what Miss Li was most interested in was playing beautifully, but the girl did not understand him, for he spoke with a Western royal accent. With Bogui watching everything, he threw another phone on the floor. His servant said his brother was calling him. The man angrily demanded to hang up the phone, but they didn't have time to do so. His brother's voice came out of the phone, asking him to call Huayu to support Shin Shin. Bogui asked if it was the same Huayuyu who had just been talked about on Sweet Love. The brother promised that he would pay any money to get his wife back. When Shin Shin's ex-husband asked which wife, the man hung up on him. The man was angry. Miss Xia sat, the project participant, in front of her. Ching Ching claimed that she was about to embarrass herself. But Shin Shin looked calm. She said that there was still 1 minute left. Everyone stood and stared in surprise at the door, from which a long-haired blonde man in a Tai Chi outfit stepped out. Gu Huayu turned out to be Shin Shin's nephew. Everyone stared at them in astonishment. They hadn't expected such a turn of events. Huayu leaned over his aunt so that she could stroke his head. In the background, Ashu was jealous. The nephew offered to walk Shin Shin, but then Shin Shin's hand was intercepted by the prince. The girl inquired who had chosen the Taiji ambassador. They are in the process of choosing, for Miss Xia declined the offer last time.
They hold hands and decide to go to a high-class restaurant to eat something tasty.
The show. Li Shu was advertising a set of skincare products from the Mu Yan family.
They walked into the restaurant and Rose was stunned. He tells her it's nice inside, but she tells him she can't wait to try the food.
Of course she didn't think so. She wanted everyone to know about her connection with the
Mr. Moore and Rose sit down at the table and he says he's sitting in a beautiful place. But Rose in her mind says Mr. Moore's face is even more beautiful.
She shared with Li Shu. With her were her servants, the prince and the hostess. Li Shu had prepared a gift for the girl, a set of cosmetics.
As they eat, she says it's a pretty charming place and it's full of life. But he says that's the charm of the Roman city street. But it's not a unique place. After the oil was extracted there, the money started flowing and that city was built.
By asking,
the waiter approaches Mr. Moore, and he tells Rose that if she wants to eat alone for a while because he had a message about work.
Assured her that
She was already full of food. The food for her was not as good as at home, but she liked the atmosphere because it was very pleasant.
The mere mortals what skincare products Miss Xia was using. The prince intervened, but the girl quickly.
At one point, a blonde boy sits down with her at the table and asks her if there was anything that bothered her. That boy says he couldn't help but notice a lot. That boy is caught by Mr. Moore and seemed a little nervous. Mr. Moore tells him he doesn't think this will happen and asks Rose if it's fair.
Were developed by her own research institute according to her skin type. Shin Shin whispered for him to take. It's worth it. Grandmaster still agreed to send his card number. Miss Xia wondered why he didn't want to take the money, since he didn't have much. The long-haired guy explained that Bo Gui thought he was covering for her. He wouldn't take the money. But Xia Shin Shin was sure he should have been charged more money. A maid ran up to Xia Shin Shin with the news that the tube said if Miss Xia wanted to see her child, she needed to answer the phone. The protagonist picked up the phone. Lu Bo Gui's voice came through the phone. The men stood there thinking that Mr. Lu was a bastard, threatening his ex-wife with a child. Miss Shin Shin gathered herself to meet him, reassuring the men that she just needed to talk to him in person. Miss Xia walked into Lu Bo Gui's office. The man started from the doorstep that it hadn't been long, and she had already gotten herself a new man, not bothered by the fact that he himself had already gotten a fiancé. With the girl came Ashu and Huayu. Bo Gui showed Shin Shin a photo of her hugging a man, with words to the effect that he hoped she would keep her honor and body, and that she wouldn't go back to him when she got spoiled. The ex-husband boasted that he bought the picture from Li Shu and destroyed the evidence. The girl punched Bo Gui in the face. The phone fell out of his hands. Now there was no use for it. The smartphone shattered on the floor. Miss Xia spoke out to her ex-husband. The girl has been blind all 3 years since she loved him, because he, after seeing only one photo, thought so badly of her. The man thinks that everything that the girl has now, appeared to her from a rich patron. The protagonist asked if he believed all the words on the internet and if he really believed that she had a crush on Hua Yu. The girl promised that when the grandfather got better, she would take the baby and raise it herself. But it turns out that the grandfather doesn't even know that Xin has a child. Xin warned her ex-husband that if he didn't want trouble, he'd better not mess with her. The girl had never told her husband anything about herself. He only remembered that she had grown up in the mountains. But Miss Sia reminded him that he didn't want to listen to her, so she stopped telling him anything about herself. The man apologized to Xin. The girl turned around at him with eyes huge with shock. Bo Gui's inner demon fought against the light side, saying that the general president couldn't just take it upon himself to admit that he was wrong. The man himself hadn't expected this from himself. The girl sighed and walked towards the exit. The man grabbed her hand, but Xin recoiled from him. She shouted that in all 3 years he had been rude to her. Now that they were divorced, she didn't need his apology.